Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. We are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. The NFL Draft. In the past now, the Titans making 8 picks over the weekend and adding to this roster heading into 2026. We are going to break it all down for you today. Parker, how's it going?
It's going good. NFL Draft in the books. It was a fun, exciting weekend, very eventful day 1 and day 2. Day 3, a little bit left to be desired. I'm sure you saw that clip that went around on Twitter about, I can't remember who it was. It was some reporter talking about how NIL and the transfer portal really cut out rounds 4 through 7 this year, and made that less interesting. And my thoughts were, just the poor NFL. What will they ever do? How will they ever rebound?
No, that was a big topic of the weekend. Was there really a whole lot of depth late in the draft? And also the conversation around teams reaching relative to what the consensus board says. And we'll talk about that because our good friends in the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars, had themselves a very strange weekend at the NFL Draft. But the Titans did make some picks Friday and Saturday. We broke down Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk on Friday's show, and we'll talk more about those picks later in the draft as well. But let's start with Friday. Anthony Hill Jr., the only pick that the Titans were able to make on Friday's rounds 2 and 3, moved up from 69 back into the second round to get Hill at 60. And I really like the pick. I think this is, as Mike Borgonzi said on Friday night, he is the prototypical Robert Saleh middle linebacker. And they wanted to find that guy. We talked about Sonny Styles for weeks of, could he be the Fred Warner-esque player that Robert Saleh likes to have in the middle of his defense? They didn't go Styles early. They end up going into the second round and getting Anthony Hill. I really like it. I think it's a good value considering where he was ranked by most people. And I think he's a good fit for what Robert Saleh wants to do, rounding out what is now a really strong front seven for this team heading into Robert Saleh's first season.
Yeah, and I know there's not a whole lot of trust to go around when it comes to the Titans organization, just given on how the last few years have went. But when it comes to evaluating defensive guys, I really trust Robert Saleh in that aspect. And Anthony Hill, I was kind of surprised that the Titans targeted a middle linebacker when they did. I thought it might be a little bit later on in the draft, but what we learned from round 1, right, trading back in late, getting Keldrick Falk, if there's a guy that they want on the board, they're not just going to sit on their hands and wait. And they went up and they got him, and they didn't have a 3rd-round pick, didn't have a 4th-round pick, so that shows you how bad that they wanted Anthony Hill. It makes sense. He's a see-ball, get-ball linebacker, very quick, probably going to start right away with the green dot. So I liked the pick. I liked Anthony Hill. I thought he was definitely a top 3 linebacker in this class, and to me, it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think you looked past Sonny Styles and you said the 2 linebackers that you think can come in and immediately start in this defense. Jacob Rodriguez was the other one, and Anthony Hill. I think Hill is immediately your green dot middle linebacker. That puts Cedric Gray in a position that's probably better suited for him as one of the outside guys in this Robert Saleh defense. And I really like the pick. I wrote down, I think the Titans went quality over quantity early in this draft. They felt convicted, like you said, on Keldrick Falk and Anthony Hill, and they decided to move up to go get those guys. And I think it's good to see that the Titans weren't set in their initial plan, which has always been they want more picks in the top 100. They want more throws at the dartboard. But they saw these players that they felt like were going to be great fits and could come in and immediately make a difference on this team, and they went up and got them. It was disappointing that once you made that pick at 60, the Titans had about 80 picks until they were back on the clock, and you were still missing that opportunity to go get an interior offensive lineman. Now, they addressed it later. We'll talk about some of the guys they added there, but I did like to see for the Titans, even though they didn't end up getting as many early shots at players, right? Like you had 4 picks in the top 101 heading into it, and 6 in the top 144 was what you had heading into the draft. You ended up only making 3 picks in the top 100 and then 4 in the top 142. But I think you were able to get players that they believed in rather than trading back for the sake of trading back or waiting and seeing what happens. We found out pretty quickly that Anthony Hill wouldn't have been there at 69 if they had sat and waited and been like, all right, we can hold on to 144 if we just wait it out. The Broncos, it was reported that they were going to take Anthony Hill if the Titans didn't move up and get him. So I really like, if you're convicted on a player and you think this is a guy who is going to come in and immediately be a staple on this defense, go up and get him. And I thought the Anthony Hill pick was my favorite of the weekend that the Titans made.
Well, it was certainly one of mine. You know my other one, but
Yes.
we'll get to that a little bit later. No, I like it. I like that the Titans were swinging big. I'm still, and I can't get this thought out of my mind. You know, when Chad Brinker said a couple years ago, getting 12 picks in the top 100 over the next 3 drafts, what, they had 9 over the last 3.
So yeah, well, so they said that before last year's draft. They have now
Okay.
had 6 in the top 100. They said they wanted 12. So not going to happen.
Yeah,
I don't think you're
very
getting
unlikely.
6 top 100 picks next year.
I'm still confused if that was lip service or not, or if that's actually going to happen. But in terms of the quality over quantity, yes, I do kind of like the approach because, how do you get better is by getting really, really good football players. And I believe that's what they did. Keldrick Falk, I did like, because it's easy to question the production, right? But listening to how Saleh said that he was going to deploy him, right? He's a much better run stopper than he is pass rusher. At least he was in college. That may change in the NFL. So the early plan is, all right, we're going to have him rush wide, or have him start at wide 9 on rundowns and then kick him inside on pass downs. To me, that makes sense on how they're going to use him. And honestly, I hope it works out for him.
And Justin from Greenbrier makes a good point here with kind of marrying the two thoughts that we just had together. Were the Titans so aggressive at moving up the draft board because of NIL affecting the depth of talent? And I think maybe that's part of it, is the Titans may have looked and seen, all right, we've got 6 picks on day 3. But when you get outside the top 100, you're not getting as many impact players. Now, sure, there's going to be good players that came from day 3 of the draft. It happens every year. But the depth of talent, I think, was lessened this year because you had less underclassmen coming out. If they didn't think they were going to be a first or second round pick, odds are you just go back to school and hope you can improve your stock next year. So I do wonder if that played a part in it. Is the Titans could have looked at their board and said, hey, we've got a lot of guys we like in the top 60 or 70, but there's not really a whole lot of guys that we're convicted on that are going to be available for us on day 3. So I think that could be part of it too, is the Titans said, yeah, sure, we can hold on to 101 and 144 and get guys who are maybe going to be depth pieces on this team, or we can be aggressive and go get somebody that we think can be a John Franklin Myers clone in Keldrick Falk. That's kind of the way they described it, is he's going to be that guy who can play inside, play outside. And I like that Robert Saleh, when they introduced Falk and Tate on Friday, said that for the most part on the defensive line, he likes his guys to play 60% of the snaps. Now, I would think Jeffrey Simmons is going to play more than that, but everybody else, I think he wants to rotate. So it is nice now. You look at the rotation he has. You got John Franklin Myers and Keldrick Falk who can do similar things. You've got Jermaine Johnson and Jacob Martin who are going to be more on the outside there. You've got Solomon Thomas and Jordan Elliott who can rotate in on the inside. He was very complimentary of Femi, and we'll talk about this later in the show too. I do think that was a smart pick to go get that guy. And then Anthony Hill, they need a linebacker. And I talking with TD, Cedric Gray didn't really fit into that middle linebacker role that Robert Saleh wants. He's a good inside linebacker in a 3-4, but he was more of an outside linebacker in a 4-3. I do think that pairing of Hill and Gray is going to be really solid for this team. So I do think maybe that's true. The Titans looked and saw these two can help us now more than the extra pick that we would get by staying put and hoping that they get to us.
Cedric Gray is still going to be really valuable, right? Because he had a ton of tackles last year. He has a really good nose for the football, but Anthony Hill is so much quicker and faster than Cedric Gray is, which is exactly what Saleh wants, right? One of his strengths at Texas was rushing the passer. That's not necessarily a strength of Cedric Gray. He's more so let the defensive line do the work, open up the gaps, and then Cedric Gray is going to attack and fill those gaps. That's Cedric Gray's game, where Anthony Hill has a bit of a more diverse skill set. I do not think that they're going to rush him as much as he did at Texas, but he's certainly a solid type in the fact that he's quicker and he's more violent.
And Gray and Hill might have some great opportunities to rack up tackle numbers this year because the front four on rundowns is going to be stout. Jermaine Johnson, Jeffrey Simmons, John Franklin Myers, Keldrick Falk. It's going, the Jeffrey Simmons quote, "No one runs on the Tennessee Titans." It might be a little more true this year than it has the last couple of seasons since he said that after the Titans then rolled off like 3 straight games where they gave up 200 yards.
Yep.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. We want your reaction to the Titans draft class this weekend. How do you think they did? Who is going to play the biggest role this season for the Titans coming out of the 2026 draft? 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll dive into day 3 tomorrow. The Titans finally addressing the interior of the offensive line. What does that group look like as there's still a little bit of shakiness at center and right guard? We'll look into that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly off and running on this Monday morning. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, reacting to the NFL draft over the weekend. Titans adding to the roster Carnell Tate, Keldrick Falk on Thursday, Anthony Hill Jr. on Friday, then Fernando Carmona, Nicholas Singleton, Jackie Marshall, Pat Coogan, and Jaron Kanik on Saturday to round out an 8-person class. We're going to dive into day 3 coming up in a minute, but first let's go to the phone lines. We've got to get Trey's reaction to the draft. Trey, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. Good morning. I think the Titans have done it very, very well. They've gotten components in there that can actually do the job. I think physically, I think they could do the job. Violently, I want to see some violence out there on the field. You know, I'm good. I'm on violence. They got to be violent. I want to see some violence out there. But I wanted to say, man, what was y'all doing on Friday about 3:00?
Friday at 3:00. I don't know, getting ready for the draft for draft day 2.
Were you?
Yeah.
Hey, so, dude, you're not going to believe this when I tell you this. So when Vanderbilt beat Alabama, I think y'all was broadcasting the game.
Yeah.
And I was just riding around, and I said, God, I want to meet that quarterback that beat Alabama. Dude, bro, I met Diego Pavia Friday.
What? Wow. Where did you meet him?
In Hermitage.
Wow.
Oh, about it.
That's awesome.
At 3:00, bro.
That's
and we had a good conversation. There's a picture of it. If you go to Hip Hermitage Facebook page, I posted it on Hip Hermitage Facebook page.
okay.
But he is a good guy, man. Like, I believe that the league let him down. I believe he let himself down. We had a pretty good conversation, you know, and you know, everybody talk about how short he is and all of that. Dude, he's no shorter than Steve McNair, you know, and he's tough. And I was just floored, man, when I was able to meet Diego. And, you know, he respected me. I respected him, you know, and nobody else noticed him. I'm just like, how can you not notice Diego Pavia? You know what I'm saying? And, you know, if you don't believe me, I got the picture to send it to you. But I think he's an awesome guy. I think anybody that picks him up will be greatly appreciative of his talent. And I wish the Titans would bring him in for a camp visit because he's an extremely good guy, and I love him to death. And Diego, if you're listening, I want to give you a shout out, buddy. And y'all have a good day. I love y'all. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Trey. That's cool that he got to meet Diego Pavia. Obviously, a tough weekend for Diego as he goes undrafted. He is getting a mini camp tryout with the Baltimore Ravens. So we'll dive more into Diego Pavia coming up later in the show. Of course, that was one of the stories of the weekend. Trey also very clear that he wants violence from the Titans. I think he said it about 8 times. So the Titans were able to add some players on day 3. We can dive into that right here. Let's start with the interior of the offensive line, Parker, because of course that was a focal point this weekend, especially when the Titans didn't address it on day 2. I will say when the Titans did trade up to 60, I thought it was for Pregnon because he was sliding down draft boards. I think he fell all the way to 88 to the Jaguars, which was the Jaguars' only pick of a consensus top 100 player this weekend. But Pregnon was the guy I thought it was for. I thought Hill, it could have been. Keontae Scott was another guy I was kind of keeping an eye on who he fell to day 3. But coming out of that second round pick of Anthony Hill, you had 80 picks to wait it out, and the Titans were still sitting on just those 3 guys on the interior of the offensive line, Slater, Sloatman, and Volson. But they do add 2 players on Saturday, Fernando Carmona, the guard from Arkansas, and then center Pat Coogan, the MVP of the Rose Bowl from Indiana, national champion Pat Coogan. They addressed it. I do think it was a little bit late. And I know that you had to you had to address other needs, right? Like edge was a need. You needed to go find young talent there. Linebacker was a need. You had to go find a young player there who could step into this solid defense. You just didn't have enough picks to go out and address all of them on days 1 and 2. But I do think that these guys are going to be more projects than they are ready to go starters right now. Now they're going to get a chance to compete. And I think you look at it and you say, all right, you've got Coogan and Sloatman are your centers. You've got Volson and Carmona there at right guard. And then Slater, Borgonzi said he's been working more at guard than center, but he can play both. You got 5 guys for 2 spots. I don't know if I feel great about any of them, but at the very least, you're going to see competition, and hopefully iron sharpens iron, and you're going to get a good option out there. But there's a lot of inexperience, and whoever they put out there is going to be unproven at center and right guard heading into 2026.
Well, now that we're here, Pat Coogan was one of my favorite picks of the weekend, and I mentioned it last week that I thought the Titans should address the center position on day 3, and that's what they did. I was a big fan of Jake Slaughter from Florida. He got selected by the Chargers in round 2, which I was a little bit surprised by, but at the same time, not really, because I believe he was the best center in the draft. But Pat Coogan is a guy that I liked a ton heading into this, not just because he was the Rose Bowl MVP, but because he has a lot of fight to him. He's a very smart football player. He's not going to be, the biggest or the strongest, but he's very good at walling off in the run game, and he's a very serviceable pass blocker who is going to compete for that starting center spot, and he may very well do it. So there was a lot of value there. In terms of Fernando Carmona, he's a guy that is a 4-year starter between San Jose and Arkansas, played, I believe, 2 seasons at left tackle.
Yeah, I think he played left tackle and then spent all season last year at left guard.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting considering that left tackle background and what this means for Jackson Slater. Did the previous staff like him more than this current staff? I don't know, but competition tends to bring out the best in players. So that is going to be a very fun position to watch come training camp.
Yeah, I'm glad they added there. You needed more players. You needed more options at center and right guard. I don't know if it makes me feel overall better about the offensive line, though, right? Like adding Carmona and Coogan, sure, you've got more options there, which is great. But heading into week 1, I don't know if any solution at center and right guard makes me feel better, with the exception of signing Kevin Zeitler. Like, I think if you bring in Zeitler, it makes everything a little bit easier, because then Slater can move fully to center, and in that competition with Sloatman and Coogan, you've got depth along the interior of the offensive line. Then I would feel great about having the safety nets of Sloatman and Volson as your backups along the interior. But it's a crowded room now. I don't know if Kevin Zeitler makes a whole lot of sense in their minds of, we just drafted 2 guys in that room. We've got 5 options for 2 spots. Not everybody's going to be able to make the team, and you probably would have to cut either one of your rookies or maybe Cordell Volson. I don't know if it makes sense to call Kevin Zeitler, although it would make me feel a whole lot better about what they're doing going into week 1. Maybe these guys end up being steals, and we look back and say, man, Pat Coogan in the 6th round was a steal, and Jackson Slater at right guard. You've got 4 of your 5 offensive line spots settled for the next half decade. But it's a big if, right? And I think it's more likely you're going to see Sloatman start at center, who has 18 career starts, and maybe Volson start at right guard. And those guys are replacement level veterans. Like, I don't think you're going to get good production out of those players, which could lead to a tough start to the year for Cam Ward.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely a concern. And by no means do I feel good about the interior, that triangle. Skoronski's obviously going to be a key piece there at left guard, but in terms of center and in terms of right guard, you just don't know what you're going to get. And while those 2 are probably the least valuable positions on the offensive line when it comes to the big scope, obviously the tackles are going to be the most important, but you still need, because just the way the position of defensive tackle, how that's kind of trended over the last couple of years, specifically in the NFL, a lot more teams are getting that pressure up the middle. So that interior triangle is becoming more important. And the Titans, at least for right now, we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of concerns. So hopefully it's able to figure itself out, but definitely concerned.
Yeah, the offensive line getting better this year is going to revolve a lot around J.C. Latham taking a step and Dan Moore being better and more consistent on the left side. If the tackles are better, the whole line is going to be better. But you're right. The interior pressure is starting to become more of a trend in the NFL. You're seeing those defensive tackles get paid and valued much more. Are they going to be able to put out center and right guard options that are starting level NFL players? I think there's question marks with all 5 of those guys at center and right guard right now. 615-737-1025. Let's go to the phone lines. Gorilla is on the line. Gorilla, thanks for calling. Good morning.
Yeah, what's going on, fellas? Check this out, man. I'm calling in about the last show. What's the name of the last show that comes on before you guys?
Robbie and Rexroad.
Robbie and Rexroad. Yeah, that guy right there. Check this out. I just wanted to say to him and them and his entire audience and guys listening to you now, if you gave the Tennessee Titans a C+ grade, I'm sorry. If you fix your mouth to say C+, you don't know football. I'm sorry. You don't know football. And I don't know who gave you your position. They need to reevaluate that. I can't listen to those guys no more. They know nothing.
So
if you're gonna give them a C+, I don't. That was a master class, guys. That was a master class. I know we got some guys that have some upsides. We got some guys that are, but that was a master class.
Gorilla, I was listening to Joe, and he said that he gives everyone a C because you don't know yet. None of these guys have played a snap of NFL football.
Okay.
He was not evaluating their picks.
Yeah.
It was just draft grades are stupid, right?
Okay. So check this out. If he's gonna do that right there, don't even grade it.
Oh,
How that sound? No,
yeah.
you're not gonna play the coward role and play the line. Well, hey, ESPN said an F and Sports Illustrated said an A, and I'm gonna take the middle because I just don't really know. Hiccup. Last night was a ball. You enjoy the draft with a beer? That's what it sounds like. Now, take a side. Period. Take a side. I mean, I'm gonna listen to the guys, but you know. But I thought that was a real soft way to take that, man. I didn't like that because this is not a C. This is not a C. The haters, I'm talking about the haters of the Tennessee Titans, haters had to give it a B+.
I appreciate the call, Gorilla. I mean, I think draft grades are one of the stupidest things ever. We get today and yesterday, we get 2 of the stupidest articles that are written about sports the entire year. One is draft grade articles. Sure, you can compare it to whatever you thought, and you can think that the Cleveland Browns had the best draft in the entire NFL. Those guys have to go in and produce. You're not going to know. Now, if we want to do draft grades 2 years down the road, sure, I think that's a good idea. And then way too early mock drafts. They are the 2 stupidest articles that we get every single year. Draft grades and way too early mock drafts.
You know who was number 1 in the way too early mock draft last year?
Arch Manning.
Cade Klubnik.
Oh, Cade Klubnik. Yeah.
He didn't get drafted until what? Day 3,
he was a
fourth
round
pick
pick of
the
the Jets. Yeah. So, well,
I care so much that I didn't even read the way too early in the draft grades.
The way too early mock drafts and draft grades every year. I just laugh. It's like you don't know anything, right? Like you're grading the test before it's even taken. So I understand what Gorilla is saying, that maybe instead of saying C, just say you're not doing a grade at all. But I think that's what Joe is trying to get at there. Is he wasn't saying it's a C. He was saying everybody gets a C until you're proven one way or the other whether it was a good draft. 615-737-1025. We will continue to take your reaction to the Titans draft. 8 players brought in, led by first-round picks Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you, reacting to NFL Draft Weekend. Titans bring in 8 players, and the roster looking a little bit more complete than it did a week ago as we head towards the 2026 season. All of our football offseason coverage brought to you by Tennessee Brewworks. Finely tuned craft beer for finely tuned fans. Tennessee Brewworks, official craft beer of the offseason here on 1025 The Game. Let's go back to our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Keegan is called in. Keegan, thanks for calling. What you got for us today?
Hey, good morning, fellas. I'll try to keep it short. I'm sure you got a busy show today, but all in all, I like the draft class by the Titans. I liked what they did. I think we talked Friday, kind of reach on Carnell, but you're getting a good value pick in Keldrick Falk, so the first round kind of evens out. Like the move of getting Anthony Hill. I think everyone does. Obviously, super athletic, and I like the thought that we got him at 60 instead of drafting someone like Sonny Styles at 4.
Yeah.
Additional value, that's a huge difference there, so I love that. And even when it comes to the 2 offensive linemen, obviously, Pat Coogan, Carmona, I believe his name is, they can come in, they can compete. Training camp's going to be very competitive. I love that fact. Obviously, what they do this year, who knows, but I'll even shout out the 7th round guy, Koenig, I think he is. That's just a special teamer. People are going to talk about linebackers.
Right.
He's just a good special teamer, athletic guy, likes to throw his body around. You're giving Bones Fossil a piece to play with. I think that's awesome. We already got great coach. Give him someone to play with. And I think one thing, just to kind of wrap it all up, that I like about it is you can look at what the front office is doing in a sense where you restructure Calvin Ridley's contract, you get him here for this year, and then we go draft a wide receiver. So you get 1 year kind of overlapping with Ridley, a little bit of a mentor, get him out, Carnell Tate takes over that role. And I think you can kind of look at, I know it's way too early, we're just finishing this draft, but next year we're going to have obvious needs in defensive back room. Contracts are going to be expiring with guys we just signed or getting close to it. You're going to want to start looking ahead. So I like the way they structured kind of Ridley's contract, get a wide receiver in behind him. Once he expires, Tate can take over. And eventually we're going to start drafting a few more defensive backs, something we missed out on this year. And once we start drafting those guys, the Alontae Taylors, Cordell Flotts are going to be making their way out. I just think front office is doing a great job overall. So, yeah, that's why I said a lot of talking, but great front office, great job.
Yeah, I appreciate the call, Keegan. I do like the way the Titans approached this draft of they addressed the premium positions early. You had not spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver that was not a trade involving another wide receiver since Corey Davis. Again, I don't count Treylon Burks because it was 1 in, 1 out. With Corey Davis in 2017, it didn't work out for him being a superstar. Carnell Tate, you can compare the situation to it, but I do think Tate has maybe a little more upside than Corey Davis does. You hope that he can be a wide receiver 1, but I think he's going to be a starting level receiver in this league. And then you go address edge, something that you hadn't done since 2010 in the first round by bringing in Keldrick Falk. And then you had needs at less premium positions. You get Anthony Hill, you address guard, you address center. I do worry about the offensive line this year. I do, because Dan Moore is a question mark. You don't know if he's going to be a starting caliber left tackle in this league. J.C. Latham looked a lot better, and I expect him to improve this year, but you just don't know. And then center and right guard are just toss-ups right now. So I think the offensive line concerns me. I do agree. I think they did a good job of addressing their needs early that can build the team long-term, right? You need to invest your premium picks in premium positions. And they got the wide receiver. They got the edge rusher. Next year, like Keegan said, I think cornerback and left tackle are probably the 2 spots that they probably end up looking at. 615-737-1025. Back to the text line here. Chip from Mount Juliet says, I like the quality versus quantity approach. Could definitely see impact this year. I agree with that. I think if you feel convicted on a player and you want to go get him, do it, right? Like, are we going to look back if Anthony Hill is a top 5 linebacker in the league or even top 10 linebacker in the league and say, man, I can't believe they gave up the 144th pick to go get him, right? Like, if you feel convicted on a player, go up and get him. They did that with Keldrick Falk and Anthony Hill. 4312 says people are sleeping on Singleton. That dude is a tank and the best bang for buck pick the Titans made. I do agree. I think Singleton was a good value pick.
I
for
think
the Titans.
there's running back 2 upside there for sure.
And I wonder, who does that push out in that room?
That's the thing. I feel like your offensive line, the guard center battle, and then the running back room are going to be two of the most exciting positions to watch come training camp, just because there's going to be so much competition. I mean, you think about the guys that are in the running back room right now: Pollard, Spears, Mullings, Chestnut, Singleton, and Michael Carter.
It's a loaded room.
Yeah,
I
2 people have to go at least.
I don't think you're getting rid of Pollard unless somebody wants to trade for him, which I feel like if that was going to happen, it would have materialized.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that right now, just because who's going to be your running back
Right,
one?
yeah,
Spears?
I think Pollard's going to be there. Maybe Spears gets cut. Like,
He can't stay healthy. I would have loved to trade him.
and he is a full former regime player, like drafted by Carthon, coached by Callahan. There's no ties to Borgonzi or Sala. I think if you go with 3 in the running back room, there's a chance that it's Pollard, Singleton, Carter rather than Spears. But that'll be something that we keep an eye on in training camp, because that is a very crowded room now with the addition of Nick Singleton. 615-737-1025. Justin from Greenbrier asks, I think the big question we will never know the answer to is, if Jeremiah Love was there at 4, did the Titans still go wide receiver? And yeah, we don't know that. I think Carnell Tate, and I saw this in the YouTube chat too. Top Tier says Tate wasn't a reach when you had at least 3 teams behind the Titans in the top 10 targeting Tate. I think reach may not be the right word for Carnell Tate. In this draft, I don't think he was a reach, because clearly teams valued him as the top wide receiver on the board. So picking him at 4 when the Chiefs were willing to trade up and maybe get him at 6, or maybe the Giants would have taken him, or maybe the
Browns. What I heard. Like, it was either him or Delane for the Chiefs.
The 5 teams behind them all could have taken Carnell Tate. And I think in this draft, I wouldn't call it a reach, but when you look at the overall value of wide receivers and the prospects that you expect to get in the top 5, Carnell Tate is not at that level. He is not Jamar Chase. He is not Julio Jones. He is not AJ Green. Like he's not Calvin Johnson. That's where I think the word reach is maybe not the right way to frame it, because in this draft, I think he was picked about where he was valued by the NFL. But if you're putting together all the wide receiver prospects ever, I wouldn't put him in that same tier as the guys you typically see in the top 5.
I did refer to him as a little bit of a reach. I would have felt very comfortable taking him 10th overall. I like Carnell Tate. I think that he is going to pan out, just because, and this just isn't because of the track record. I mean, you watch him, I think he's definitely going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. But if you're going to be picked 4th overall, I'm expecting you to be a tier 1 wide receiver by the time your rookie contract is up, right? I need 1,300 yards from you within the next 3 seasons. That is the expectation. And when I watch Carnell Tate, it's just hard for me to visualize. I could see him being a Chris Olave. I could see him being a Garrett Wilson, but I need him to be better than that. I need him to be better than Devontae Smith. I need him to be better than T. Higgins, which is, when I watch him, that's just what I see.
Yeah, and that's going to be the question for Carnell Tate. I don't think anybody doubts that Carnell Tate is going to be a good NFL wide receiver. It would be kind of stupid to doubt Ohio State wide receivers coming out lately. And Carnell Tate has proven that he is a very talented player. It's just, is he that wide receiver 1 the Titans have been looking for, or is he going to be just a starting level NFL wide receiver during his time with the Titans? 615-737-1025. Lots more to get to on the draft. We will wrap up hour number 1 after this. We'll take your phones on our phone and text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, finishing up the first hour on this Reaction Monday. The NFL draft wrapping up on Saturday. Titans made 8 picks, and we're going to spend most of the show on the Titans. I did want to just interject quickly about the ongoing argument that's going on around the NFL world after this weekend's draft about the media consensus versus what teams value in their draft rooms, right? There are 2 teams that have been the focus of this argument. The San Francisco 49ers, who they reach a lot. They do. Like, did anyone think Deshaun Stribling was going to go 33rd overall, first pick of the second round?
No, I thought he was a round 3 guy.
Right, over Denzel Boston.
Yeah.
Like, I did not see that one coming. Kalen Black, who they took in the 3rd round, running back from Indiana. He's a draftable player, but was viewed more as a mid-day 3 pick rather than a 3rd round pick. The other side of this is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I cannot comprehend their draft this weekend. And I loved, and I want to put like 2 sides of the coin here, where those are 2 teams that are reaching based on the consensus board. Like, you take all of the media analyst mocks and big boards and put them together and say, this is where players are expected to go. I think there's a difference between reaching for draftable players and reaching for players that should not have been drafted. And that's, or reaching for players 2 rounds early versus 3 rounds early. Like, I think there is something to be said for these guys in the NFL have so much more information than the fans and media do. They get to talk to these players. They get the medical information. They talk to the coaches. They have so much more information. But if a guy is a reach compared to the consensus, all that takes is one team making that move. Steals, like we talk about Jermod McCoy or like some of these guys that fall, that's usually because there's something wrong with him, because all 32 teams are passing on them. When you look at the Jaguars and the 49ers and their reaches, the 49ers, I guess I can kind of understand some of them. Like, for Kyle Shanahan, if he thinks Deshaun Stribling fits his offense perfectly and Kalen Black fits his offense perfectly, yeah, you're taking them earlier than maybe they would, but if you don't want to miss out, I get it. The Jaguars.
Hey, Shanahan loves his round 3 running backs.
He does. I mean, he takes one almost every year and almost none of them pan out. But you keep going ahead, Kyle Shanahan, you keep winning. The Jaguars, they just seem hell-bent on trying to prove that they're different from everybody else. Taking Nate Boerkerker, 53rd? When he was expected to be like a 5th or 6th round pick and had 38 career receptions.
He was, so ESPN had him as the 13th best tight end, and they took him in the 2nd round.
They took him over Eli Stowers, right? Or at least it was
my
close.
gosh, I sure hope not.
I think
I don't
they
think
did.
I don't think it was before Stowers, but if it was before Stowers,
I think it was.
that's
I think
just
it was like
bad.
4 picks before Stowers. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Jaguars. They took him 56th. The Eagles
He went 2
took
picks after Stowers.
Oh, 2 picks after Stowers. All right. So, but those guys were not viewed as being in the same bucket. That one, sure, if you want to take a blocking tight end who has less than 40 career catches in 5 years, who is projected as a 6th round pick in the 2nd, whatever. But late in the draft, did you see the consensus numbers on some of their 7th round picks, which it's a 7th round pick. I know it's not that much value, but did you see where some of these guys were expected, like were ranked, Parker?
Yeah, I saw the Middle Tennessee linebacker was projected to go undrafted.
Well, so they had 2 guys they drafted. One was the 678th player in the consensus board. One was the 679th player in the consensus board. So that means
Who's Zach Durfee, the edge from Washington?
It was their last pick and their 3rd to last pick. I'm
and
blanking
CJ
on the
Williams,
names.
the
CJ
wide receiver
Williams,
from
from Stanford, and then their last pick as well was also close to 700 on the consensus board. And I know the consensus board isn't everything. These guys have more information, but if the whole NFL world of everybody who watches these guys play says that if there was one draft, they'd go undrafted. If there was a 2nd draft, you just did all 7 rounds over again, they'd still go undrafted. And if you had a third draft, they'd go on day 3. Maybe you shouldn't be taking these players. They're probably going to be out there as undrafted free agents, and you can go value them there. And I just thought it was hilarious, James Gladstone stepping to the podium and saying, yeah, well, we did a predictive mock of where we think some of our players might slot in. And we had 11 picks going in, and we got 10 of the guys that we expected to get. And it's cool that it slotted out the way we expected. I'm like, Mr. Gladstone, when you pick players 3 rounds before they're expected to go, then yeah, you're probably going to get them. Like I do not understand what the Jaguars are doing. Maybe James Gladstone is smarter than everybody else. And I've been an advocate of let's not judge the drafts before they hit the field, but we're judging this. They had 4 picks in the top 150, and they did not get a single player. They got 1 player who was ranked in the top 150. They got Pregnon. That was it. So again, I don't want to overreact. Maybe James Gladstone is a genius, and we're all just overreacting for no reason. Maybe CJ Williams from Stanford, who is the 678th player on the consensus board, is going to turn out to be an all-pro. But I just... They did the whole thing of not going to the combine and not hosting 30 visits. And then they do this. It's like they think they're smarter than everybody else. It seems we'll find out pretty quickly if they are based on how this draft goes, but taking a 5th or 6th round tight end in the top 60, and then taking a bunch of guys who may not have even gotten undrafted free agent deals in the 7th round. We'll see how it pans out for James Gladstone and company. A couple of texts here. Trevor says, yeah, maybe San Francisco should stop using AI to help them make picks. He says Gladstone going to have Jags fans missing Trent Baalke. Yeah, I saw somebody tweeted that Gladstone's going to get Trent Baalke into the Hall of Fame with the way that he's drafting. 1137 says the Jaguars don't even know what they're doing. They're literally spinning the wheel of chance or throwing darts at a spreadsheet on the wall. I mean, the Borgkircher pick was hilarious. And there is value in blocking tight ends, and we saw that this weekend. There was a lot more of those Y tight ends who got picked. But Nate Borgkircher, he played 4 years at Nebraska and then played his last year at Texas A&M. He had 19 catches, this past year for less than 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. In his entire career at Nebraska, he had less than 20 catches. Like that, I get blocking tight ends matter, but at 53 or 54, wherever they took him, like 56, I think it was. Stowers was 54. I don't get it. We'll see. Maybe Gladstone is actually smarter than everyone else instead of just telling everyone he is smarter than everyone else. 615-737-1025. Let's go to the phone lines. Dr. Locke is called in. Thanks for calling, Dr. Locke. What you got?
What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Hey, Pat Coogan pick, the center for Indiana, that guy is going to come in and compete to be a starter from day one. That guy was an absolute stud. If you remember in the playoffs, you guys will know. You guys always know, or you can look it up faster than I can. But there was a game in the playoffs where Kurt Herbstreit was like, I'm going to give the game ball to the entire O-line of Indiana. They went down, and Laura Rutledge, whoever the sideline reporter was, put a mic in Coogan's face, and he had a great interview after the game. And they had pushed the whole game, and it starts right there at the center position. He was a dog. Ohio State played him, and our nose tackle went late 1st round, early 2nd round, and our nose tackle couldn't push him back at all. So you're talking about a early 2nd, late 1st nose tackle against a 6th round, which was a steal. He was a steal in the 6th round. And Coogan didn't give up anything.
No, I think Pat Coogan was a great value pick. And yeah, you mentioned it was the Rose Bowl against Alabama where he was the MVP of the Rose Bowl. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I mean, he's a 6th round rookie. I don't know if you can expect him to jump in and start immediately, but he's going to get
a chance.
He's going to be given an opportunity to compete.
I think he will compete, and I think before the season's out, you'll see him on the field. And I would not be surprised if he overtook and was there. The running back room got a nice boost. That Singleton I was reading on him. I had no idea he's got more all-purpose yards than Saquon Barkley. I mean, that guy's a dog. So he'll push the running back room. So the second half of our draft, I mean, we were on fire. They let the vanilla gorilla get away from him. he was undrafted, but she got the Bears swooped him up.
No,
But when you get Vanilla Gorilla 2.0 and Pat Coogan, it doesn't really matter.
there you go.
Hey, I'll take Pat Coogan way over the gorilla.
Thanks for the call, Dr. Locke. I agree. I think Coogan was one of the best picks they made on day 3, and we'll see. With Austin Sloatman being the only other true center in that room, it wouldn't shock me if Coogan, by the end of the year, is the starting center for the Titans if he's able to develop under Carmen Bracillo. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We will step aside. Hour number 2 is coming up next. The first text we got as we came on the air was about Will Levis not being traded. And I know I've been on that train for about a year now since Cam Ward was the pick. We'll talk about it coming up next. Why is he still on the roster, and when could he be moved? 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Second hour, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Reacting to the NFL draft over the weekend, Titans bringing in 8 players. Carnell Tate, Keldrick Falk in the first round, followed by Anthony Hill in round 3, and then in round 2. Then on day 3, Fernando Carmona, Nick Singleton, Jackie Marshall, Pat Coogan, and Jaren Kanak. There's one move I'm surprised the Titans did not make this weekend. And I said it on
Jake.
Wednesday that my hope, my non-negotiable for the Titans was trade Will Levis no matter what. And he is still on the roster as it stands right now. It seemed like there was some smoke that was happening. I saw a report from Easton Freeze last week that Will Levis, that maybe things had softened a little bit, that there wasn't as much of a need for a break and the Titans and Levis to go different directions as maybe in the past. And he's still on the team as of right now. It confuses me because, again, we've talked about he's heading into his final year of his contract, and we get texters all the time saying, develop him and see what he can do. Well, you're developing him for another team. As soon as he hits free agency, he is not going to – why would you want him to come back, first of all, right? Like, you've got Cam Ward. You signed Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year deal. You don't need Will Levis. And my only guess is that teams just didn't value him all that much. I think that's why Anthony Richardson stuck around with the Colts, right? The only player involved trade we saw this weekend was Jonathan Grenard, unless I'm forgetting somebody else.
There was another one. It was on a much smaller scale.
Okay. The only one I remember is Grenard. But you might
Jonathan
be right,
Grenard was the big one.
Right. There might have been another one or two where a player was involved. But Anthony Richardson and Will Levis both were hot on the trade block heading into the draft, and both of them end up staying pat. I don't understand why you keep Will Levis. And the people who will say, and I know Corey Curtis has brought this up, let him play in the preseason and see if he can raise his stock. He could just as easily lower his stock, right? Like, I think you could have gotten something for him, at least heading into the draft. Maybe the Titans didn't have anybody that they wanted to go up and get, right? You could have been sitting there in the 7th round and maybe somebody would have taken Will Levis, but the Titans didn't really value anybody enough to make that move. I don't know, but he's still on the roster right now. You've got 4 quarterbacks in there with Ward, Trubisky, Hendon Hooker, and now Will Levis. I think worst case, you're just going to have to cut him. I don't see how he's on the roster this fall. I don't think the Titans are going to carry 3 quarterbacks. I know the emergency 3rd quarterback thing being available is something people bring up, but you have to carry him on the active roster to do that. So you would have to cut somebody else at another position that could help you on special teams or be depth on the defensive line where Robert Saleh likes to rotate. I don't see them carrying a 3rd quarterback. So Will Levis is going to be gone at some point. I don't know if his value is going to be raised or lowered based on what happens over the next few months. Not hoping for anybody to get injured, right? TD and I had this conversation last week. No one's hoping for injury, but there are times where a quarterback goes down in training camp, and maybe that's an opportunity to trade Will Levis to a team that is a little bit more desperate. But Will Levis is, I don't see any chance he's on the roster, the initial 53. Now you've just got to figure out where to get rid of him, how to get rid of him, and see if you can get any resources back for him in next year's draft.
I was also confused by this as well because I think his value is not going to get much higher. There's a small possibility you could have got a 5th round pick for him. I think that's what the Titans should have done. Ask for a 5th round pick, probably going to receive a 6th round pick. I just think 6th is probably fair. But what's bothered me about college football is when these guys are transferring all the time, it hinders their development significantly. So there's already an issue right now in the NFL of these guys that are coming in are not being developed properly. So you look at the low end, right? This is a weaker quarterback class, but you look at the low end of the quarterback class, right? Garrett Nussmeier, who was the last guy drafted, which was a shock to us all. Baron Morton, from Texas Tech, which the last game we saw him play
was
against
horrid.
Oregon when the offense had 0 points.
Who was the Rutgers quarterback who went?
Ethan Kaliakmanis.
Yeah.
So you'd rather have those guys. And to be honest, I don't think there's much more development you can do with Will Levis. He's certainly got the intangibles. He could be a serviceable QB2 because he has starting experience. You'd rather have those guys, Ethan Kaliakmanis. You'd rather have Baron Morton. You'd rather have Cole Payton from North Dakota State as your backup.
That was my question. It's like Kaliakmanis. I forget who picked him.
Washington.
It was Washington. Like, the Commanders wouldn't I guess they have Marcus, so there's no need for it. But there are teams. The Jaguars is the team we bring up specifically because of the Liam Cohen connection with Will Levis. Nick Mullins is their backup quarterback, and I don't think they picked a quarterback over the weekend. They did not. So I thought that would be a good move, and maybe that's still a move that's in the works. Maybe the Titans value 2027 picks more than they value 2026 picks. I don't know. But I am a little surprised that he is still on the team. Robert, who has been one of the big Will Levis defenders on the text line, says, Levis will not be going anywhere. He will be on the roster in training camp. They have no reason to get rid of him. They have no reason to keep him either, though, Robert. Like, what is the reason for Will Levis to be on the roster? If somebody can give me a good reason for Will Levis to stay on this team, I'll consider it. Speaking of which, Keegan, maybe this is the best reason. Keegan says, Levis is freaking jack. Just throw him on punt and kickoff team and let him go hit somebody. He's not playing quarterback. Let him go wreck some guys. There you go.
He showed by his play that he'd be willing to do that. He's not afraid of a little contact.
Right. You signed Trubisky to a pretty lucrative backup quarterback deal.
Right. So, I mean, last year the Titans carried only 2 quarterbacks. You think there's a chance they could carry 3? And this would be great. Seeing Will Levis and Hendon Hooker battle it out for that QB3 spot.
I look at the rest of the roster. Like, you've got 6 wide receivers that I think are locks to make the roster. It's early. Training camp still has to go on. Injuries could happen. But I feel like there's a pretty strong dividing line there. Do you want to keep a 7th? Maybe there's somebody who emerges there. Running back, we mentioned, is a loaded room. Your defensive line is loaded, especially drafting Jackie Marshall in the 6th round. If you want him to make the team, keeping a 3rd quarterback is going to take away somebody else who can help the team on special teams.
And Saleh already said that they want to carry 8 to 9 on game day.
Right.
Defensive lineman.
Yes. And maybe even 10. Like, with how he rotates defensive linemen, you're going to want more players who can help you. Otherwise, Will Levis standing in a baseball cap on the sideline as an emergency 3rd quarterback is not valuable to you. And that's why I say, what exactly is the benefit of keeping Will Levis on this team? Robert says injury, Cam doesn't work out. If Cam doesn't work out, you're not going to know this.
Well, you can always keep a guy on the practice squad too.
Well, and like, Will Levis is a free agent after this season. People don't seem to understand that. Will Levis is not coming back. He's not. So why would you keep him? I don't understand that. Justin from Greenbrier says, I know he probably won't do it, but would Will Levis move to another position to play in the league?
No.
1137 says, make Levis the Titans version
These
of
guys
Taysom
don't
Hill.
want to do. I promise Will Levis does not want to switch positions.
Yeah, guys, Will Levis.
And there's no guarantee that he'd be successful at doing so either.
And Will Levis's biggest trait is his arm talent, right? Like, he makes throws that a lot of quarterbacks can't make. It's the mental processing that has been the issue. That's why I think sending him to a team that could help him develop in that sense is going to be better. When the Rams took Ty Simpson, I knew that was a pretty big blow to the Titans trading Will Levis.
Yeah,
I thought
but
that would have been
San
a great fit.
Francisco still seems like a good spot because
they didn't trade Mac Jones.
I know, which is shocking because I would have expected Mac Jones gets another opportunity to be a starter. And then you send Will Levis to San Francisco to be the backup.
Yeah,
there's no better place for him to be other than LA than be with Kyle Shanahan.
I'm a little shocked that there was no quarterback movement over the weekend. Like, I thought Mac, if you were to ask me the 3 players I thought were going to be most likely to be traded over the weekend, it would have been the quarterbacks. It would have been Jones. It would have been Levis. It would have been Richardson. I'm surprised none of them got moved. Maybe this is something that's going to play itself out in training camp, but I still am I'm standing firm on Will Levis will not be on this team when the initial 53 drops. I'm surprised he wasn't traded. I thought it would happen this weekend, but I'm not changing my tune. He is still not going to be on this team. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll take your thoughts on that. Overall, the quarterback draft confused me, and we'll dive into Diego Pavia a little bit this hour too. Not saying that I'm shocked he wasn't drafted, but considering some of the names we did see go, I was a little surprised somebody didn't take a chance on the Vanderbilt quarterback. Also, Garrett Nussmeier falling almost out of the draft was a little bit strange as well. We'll get into all of it this hour and continue to talk about the Titans' 8-person class that they bring in, led by Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk. 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly. Reacting to NFL draft weekend. It was a busy weekend. Titans made 8 picks. Did not trade Will Levis, which is what we started this hour on. I was waiting during that long stretch from 60 to 142 to see a trade with Will Levis because you knew the team needed guard help. And I thought that was going to be the aggressive move they made. Now, it wouldn't have been a huge jump, but I think you could have gotten up 20 spots or something with Will Levis and maybe gotten a guard. Maybe they just liked Carmona and felt like he would be there. But Will Levis still on the team as it stands right now. I'm going to stand firm that he will not be on the initial 53, whether that's via trade or just cutting him. I would think they can get something for him, right? As long as he doesn't look just outright awful in training camp in the preseason. If he shows enough flashes that he's healthy and the arm talent is there, somebody will take a chance on him for a day 3 pick. But I would have rather just gotten rid of him now. That way you're able to get somebody who can help you this season rather than having to wait a whole nother year to cash in on whatever his value may be. 4312 on the text line says, overall, I do like the Titans draft. However, even after sleeping on it this weekend, I still can't put into words how much I don't like the Tate pick. We could have made off so much better with Reese in Boston. I just have a bad feeling that pick will look so bad when Reese is a stud. So initially, I was confused why they went Tate over Reese. And I think a lot of people, just because the conversation never really included Carnell Tate about number 4, the surprise factor felt a little bit disappointing, right? Of, man, he was not even somebody we were talking about, and they took him 4th overall. I do think looking back, the guys the Titans got are probably better fits for this team than Arvell Reese and Denzel Boston. Just based on what we've seen Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll use in the past. Now, that doesn't mean they're better players, but I think they do fit what these coaches want to do better than Reese and Boston. Now, I think it was a fair question on Friday. I think it was Paul Kaharski who asked Robert Saleh about the wide 9 in this defense. Who's going to play on the wide 9? That's kind of the need that we've looked at and said, the Titans don't have that speed rusher off the edge. And Keldrick Falk is not that. He's more like John Franklin Myers, who can play outside on rundowns and then push inside to rush the passer on 3rd down. Arvell Reese would have been more stereotypically that wide 9 type of guy if he lived up to being the pass rusher that everyone thinks he might be. I thought Robert Saleh was very specific in his answer of saying, don't forget about Femi Oladipo. And I am not sold on Femi being a factor. He only played 6 games last year, and even when he did play, he wasn't out there showing up on film week in and week out. But Robert Saleh and Mike Borgonzi have been intentionally complimentary of Femi Oladipo throughout this offseason and what he can bring to this defense. Robert Saleh specifically mentioned that he thinks he can play that wide 9 along with Jacob Martin and sometimes Jermaine Johnson. Mike Borgonzi mentioned that he thought Femi Oladipo could play in this system with Robert Saleh. And Saleh said that they scouted him as a hand-in-the-dirt 4-3 defensive end coming out of UCLA. So I think that's really interesting how complimentary they've been of Femi Oladipo. And maybe that went into it a little bit of the Titans felt like the fit was better getting guys like Tate and Falk rather than Arvell Reese. Again, as we talked about in the first hour, you're not going to know, right? 2 years down the road, if Carnell Tate is just a wide receiver too, if he's a Corey Davis-like player who's 800 to 1,000 yards every year, and Arvell Reese is Micah Parsons, then yeah, we'll look back and say the Titans messed up. But as of right now, I do think the fit might have played more into that decision of, is Arvell Reese going to be successful in this defense rather than Carnell Tate going to be successful in Brian Daboll's offense?
Yeah, so I want to address the defensive lineman thing first. So with Femi Oladipo, kind of he played edge rusher for half a season at UCLA. So he was still trying to get his feet underneath him. And when he got to the NFL, Denard Wilson's plan was to let's throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. Well, he got hurt and, unfortunately his rookie year was cut short. With Robert Saleh, I think I don't think, I know he's going to have a more approach plan to how are we going to deploy Femi Oladejo than let's just throw something against the wall and see what sticks. I think it would make sense in this defense to maybe kick him inside a little bit. And, Denard Wilson had Femi Oladejo, when I'd go out to practice and I'd see what they do in 7-on-7, they had him working in pass coverage. That just doesn't make sense for somebody with his body type. It would make sense for him to be one of those run stopping guys, rush from the interior, kind of like Keldrick Falk, instead of dropping back into coverage. So Robert Saleh is going to have a more approach plan on how to develop him, and I trust that he will be able to do that. Now we still got to see what happens, but I think this plan for him is going to be a lot better than the previous staff.
Yeah, and Robert Saleh said that he believes Femi Oladejo is a good fit to play the 4-3 defensive end in his system. The last system, like we saw it with Harold Landry too, playing the 3-4. They're going to ask those outside linebackers to drop into coverage sometimes, and that didn't seem to be Femi's strong suit. Can they just get him to pin his ears back and rush the passer this year? Staying healthy is the first thing, but I do like the fit better for Femi this year too.
It helps a guy that's transitioning to the NFL to, focusing on defensive end. It helps him to have one thing that I'm going to do really, really well than trying to do all these different things when, I'm just a young gun, right? A rookie, and I'm still trying to figure out how to play defensive end. It helps.
I just really like what the Titans have done on the defensive line this year. You've got your 4 starters: Johnson, Simmons, Franklin Myers, and Falk. Like, I think that is your front 4 to start games, first down on rundowns. But you've got so many weapons you can bring in different situations, whether it's Elliott and Thomas on the inside, whether it's Martin and Oladejo on the outside. Even Jalen Harrell's probably going to have a role. Jackie Marshall, who is more of your pass rush defensive tackle versus a guy who's going to stuff the run. You've given Robert Saleh a whole lot of toys to play with on that defensive front, and now you've got Anthony Hill and Cedric Gray behind him. I think that front 7, if the Titans have one elite unit on this team, it would be that right now. And that's more than they've had over the past couple of years. A team that's won 6 games in 2 seasons. 615-737-1025. Chad says, I was in on Reese too, but he's a project. He'll be playing inside linebacker in New York, apparently. If he's a true inside linebacker, I'll take what the Titans did instead with getting the clear best wide receiver and getting Falk and Ant Hill to have specific roles that make sense for them. I would have taken Reese and looked for Denzel Boston in round 2. But as we've talked about, they have way more information than we do. They know much more about how they're going to deploy these players. So I do like the picks that they made. Would I have gone with Arvell Reese at 4? Yes. But I do think Carnell Tate is going to be a good player, and it addresses a need at wide receiver that you've had for a long time. Basically, with the exception of the A.J. Brown years, for 20 years, you've been looking for a wide receiver 1. You hope that Carnell Tate can be that guy. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you have thoughts. 1382 says, guess you can say that Levis hasn't left the building, in parentheses, Elvis. Will Levis still on the team. 4 quarterbacks in that room. It is going to be crowded heading into minicamp and training camp. We'll stick on quarterbacks coming up next. Diego Pavia goes undrafted over the weekend. He's got a mini camp tryout with the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk about the Pavia situation and everything that went into it and how he can make the most of what is a better opportunity than it may look like on the surface with the Ravens. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you. NFL draft wrapped up on Saturday. Titans adding to their roster with 8 players, 2 on day 1, 1 on day 2, and then 5 on Saturday. Another big story of the weekend, Diego Pavia goes undrafted. The Heisman runner-up Vanderbilt quarterback did not hear his name called, and he is getting a mini camp invite with the Baltimore Ravens, an opportunity to work his way onto the roster. Parker, with Diego Pavia, I am a little surprised he didn't get drafted. The quarterback draft in general was confusing this year. Ty Simpson went higher than I think a lot of people were expecting. Then there was a long gap. You saw Carson Beck go early on day 3, saw Drew Aller go on day 3, and then Garrett Nussmeier falls all the way to the final quarterback taken. You see some names that maybe you weren't expecting to see at quarterback go off the board. With Diego Pavia, I think the season he turned in this past year was deserving of being drafted, right? Like, he improved so much as a passer. He had production. I do just think that the size is going to always hurt him. And unless you're Kyler Murray or, Baker Mayfield, I don't see, teams just don't want to take a chance on a guy who doesn't fit the central casting for a quarterback. They'd rather take a guy like a Will Levis, who is 6'3", 6'4" with a rocket arm. And it's like, all right, we can't teach size. We can't teach arm strength. We can teach him how to play quarterback. With Diego Pavia, I think you get a lot of the intangibles from him, but you just don't see the measurables, and teams are often scared of that because they can't teach you to be 3 inches taller, right? Or they can't teach you to throw the ball 15 yards further down the field. And with teams, they may just have not seen the upside with Diego Pavia to take him in the draft.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough conversation just because I wanted Diego Pavia so bad to get drafted, and I want him to get a chance, and I wish him nothing but the best at Ravens minicamp. But when you're already, let's be honest, Diego Pavia is athletic, but he's not the most athletic person in the world. You're able to get away with that on the college level, but you're not going to be able to run away from the best athletes in the world that you got defensive end chasing you. You're not going to be able to run away from them. The arm strength certainly improved. The accuracy downfield certainly improved, but the windows are a lot tighter. Corners, linebackers, safeties, they close those throwing windows a lot quicker in the NFL. And when you're 5'8" or 5'9" or whatever, 5'10", it's a hindrance. It's a hindrance. So it makes sense. It's not necessarily a surprise that he went undrafted, but I'm telling you, man, Pat McAfee said this on his Twitter. He's the prototypical UFL guy. CFL would love him. That would help ratings a lot. I think he's not done playing football.
I think Diego's going to find a spot where he can play, and he's going to get a chance in Baltimore, right? Like, the Ravens, looking at their depth chart, currently the only 2 quarterbacks they have on their roster are Lamar Jackson and Pro Bowler Snoop Huntley. So there's going to be competition in this mini camp to put himself into at least a spot where he's going to make a training camp roster and will get to play in the preseason with the Ravens. I know the Ravens swapped out their coaching staff. Like, it's not John Harbaugh anymore, and the system might change a little bit, but I think you will see a lot of the concepts are going to be the same. Like, you're not going to take the read option away from Lamar Jackson, no matter who the offensive coordinator is. Diego Pavia is going to have a lot of concepts that I think will translate from what he did at Vanderbilt to the Ravens, and we'll see.
That option style.
Right.
That's what they do with Lamar and Snoop Huntley.
Yes.
So that'll translate.
So he's going to get an opportunity to compete in minicamp and maybe get himself some opportunities in the preseason. We'll see what happens. Diego Pavia, you probably should learn not to doubt him at this point based on what he's done throughout his entire career. Now, I don't know if I look at him and say that's a guy who's going to start a game in the NFL at some point, but I do think there's a chance for him to make a roster eventually, even if it's not this year, even if he's on the practice squad somewhere this season. I think somebody's going to take a chance on the improvement that we've seen as a passer over the past year and just the mentality that he brings. He is a great locker room guy. I know people out there want to say that the attitude is a detractor for him. I think the attitude might actually be a positive because everybody in that Vanderbilt locker room followed him. They loved him. He's a great leader. Now, I think there also is an element of you don't want the backup quarterback to be a distraction. That's something we say all the time, is that you do not want your quarterback to be a distraction, the backup quarterback, I should say. And I think he may have to rein some things in of you don't want to be the overwhelming personality, but want to keep the mentality and the leadership that he brings. So there's a lot that goes in to Diego Pavia. Of course, the way he handled the Heisman ceremony in the aftermath wasn't great. I will say the misinformation around Diego Pavia this weekend was disappointing, and the people spreading it just without confirming whether it's real. Pro Football Talk putting out the article right after he went undrafted and he wasn't signing a UDFA contract immediately, saying, oh, I bet Diego Pavia wants an agent now. He has an agent. He has an NFL agent. He said in the interview with John Gruden that he did not have an agent for NIL at the college level because you really didn't need one. Like he can come up with his own partnerships. There's different ways to make money these days. Like you didn't really need an NIL agent. An NFL agent, he has one. And people ran with that story. And then somebody posted the fake screenshot from his Instagram story where it was, F the NFL and I'll carve my own path. It wasn't real. But you've got journalists who are putting it out there and saying, oh, I really hope this is fake. This is a bad look for Diego Pavia. Well, if you did 2 seconds of research, you could see that it was fake and not put it out there and spread more misinformation. I was disappointed with the way people handled the Diego Pavia situation after the draft.
And also, too, he didn't put on his story, F the NFL, I write my own story. That was a satire account that put it out.
It was fake, yes.
So more people are getting got. So it is unfortunate because this Diego Pavia, his persona is he was very a polarizing figure in this year's draft, and a lot of people were interested to see if he got drafted and where he might end up. And a lot of these rumors, it was just really unfortunate.
Yeah,
that's the best way to put it. It's just unfortunate.
I just think you're and Diego Pavia, some of the stuff he's said and done, he opens himself up to this, right? Like the way the Heisman ceremony happened, you open yourself up to some of these things happening. But I was disappointed by the way people just didn't fact check anything and just ran with stuff. And, for Pro Football Talk or there was a guy who works for 247 Sports who put out the fake Instagram story. It's like, you guys have a platform and you have audiences and people are going to believe you and they're never going to go fact check because they believe what you're saying is true. And I was disappointed with the way people handled that. I thought, this is Diego Pavia is still a human. And yeah, you can criticize him for the decisions he has made, but spreading misinformation and then criticizing him for stuff that isn't true, I just thought was unfair this weekend for him. But Diego Pavia going to get an opportunity to go out there and compete in the Baltimore Ravens camp, which I think is a good fit for him. I thought Carolina would have been a good fit for him too. So I was a little surprised that he wasn't drafted. But teams clearly looked at these other quarterbacks who have more of the typical quarterback traits and said, let's try and coach them up on some of the intangibles and instead of taking Diego Pavia and the intangibles and trying to see if you could make it work with some of the lack of measurables that he has. So Diego Pavia going to get an opportunity.
This is a good spot for him to end up just because that option style,
right?
That fits what he did with Tim Beck and Jerry Kill at Vanderbilt. So if you're looking for best possible landing spots and what Lamar Jackson does, what Snoop Huntley does, their style of game, this was probably one of the better spots for Diego Pavia to end up. Now we'll see what he does with the opportunity.
Yep, he's going to get the opportunity to go in there and compete, and we'll see what happens. And I'm rooting for the best for him. He did a lot for Vanderbilt during his time here, and I think the the antics are a little bit overblown. Like, yeah, he's an out there personality, but people pile on him a little bit too much for a guy that is clearly beloved by that Vanderbilt program and all of his teammates. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll wrap up hour number 2 coming up after this. I said earlier, I hate way too early mock drafts. I hate even more hyping up the next year's quarterback class when we have no idea what it's going to look like. We'll do that coming up next. Then back into the Titans coming up at the top of the hour. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman and Parker Kelly finishing up the second hour reacting to the weekend's NFL draft. We'll get into the Titans coming up in the next hour, looking through the roster, setting some expectations for the 2026 season. But we were talking about Diego Pavia, went undrafted, got a mini camp tryout with the Baltimore Ravens. Let's go to the phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Pat has called in. Pat, thanks for calling. What you got?
Not Coogan, by the way.
Well, I guess with Pavia, you gotta unpack a lot with that guy. I think you guys were talking about the comments and the stuff, and a lot of stuff online and things like that was made up. But you can just go to his college comments and his Heisman comments, and I think that was enough for a lot of people to make a decision on his attitude. And I think that maybe owners and coaches thought the same thing, But when you add the attitude and his size, which is a factor you guys touched on, I just don't think his game translates very well as a quarterback to the NFL. Now, I'm going to go to the Wayback Machine and talk about Tim Tebow because, Tebow had kind of a similar thing. He was a kind of a running quarterback. He was a big guy, though. But a lot of people talked about him being a tight end in the league. And his longevity, I think, would have been much, much longer. He might still be playing because it did work for him there, I thought, for his size and everything. But he was not an NFL quarterback, and that proved to be the case. And I think if Pavia was smart, because I would love for you guys to touch on this, why doesn't he enter the draft as a slot? Because, he knows the routes. He's played quarterback. He's obviously athletic. The short routes that are quick, I think he gets you tough yards because he's a tough guy. And he's going to get you first downs. And I'm going to hang up, let you guys comment on that. I just thought about Pavia this weekend, and I thought if he can let his ego get out of the way long enough, and he might have some longevity. I think that's the only way he plays in the NFL. That's just me, though.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Pat. I think you make a good point there there is a lot of pride that goes into being a quarterback, right? Like, I think Diego Pavia views himself as a quarterback and wants to go prove that he can play quarterback at the NFL level. But you may be right. And there are guys who are just better suited to play other positions rather than quarterback. An example coming right here to Nashville, Thomas Castellanos. He was the quarterback at Boston College for a few years, spent last year at Florida State, was part of that Seminoles team that beat Alabama in week 1. He is going to be coming to Titans camp as a wide receiver, right? Like, there are guys who realize that they can make a contribution playing at a different position. I don't know if Diego Pavia is that type of guy. I don't know if the speed is there for him to be a wide receiver or running back or something like that. Diego Pavia, I compare the way he plays quarterback a little bit to Cam Ward. Pavia is more of a runner than Ward was, but Pavia is so good at escaping the pocket and getting out of trouble and putting himself in positive situations to make a play down the field. Like, I think the escapability for Diego Pavia is his biggest athletic trait, I guess. And with Cam Ward, I would say the same. Cam Ward just has all of the other stuff that makes a good quarterback as well. The arm strength and the prototypical size, even though he's not huge, but he's bigger. With Pavia, I don't know if his athletic traits would fit being a wide receiver or a running back, but maybe that's something he would consider. I do think, like Parker said, give it your best shot at quarterback. Chase and Big Joe always talk to Tim Hasselbeck, and I hear them make the comment of, until all 32 teams tell you no, you keep trying. And I think with Pavia, you keep trying there. But I think you're right, Parker, that there's going to be a market to see Diego Pavia play quarterback somewhere else, even if it's not the NFL. And I know that may not be the ideal situation for him, but that is a way to continue to grow your brand. If he did end up going to the UFL, that would get eyeballs to the UFL. Whether you hate him or you love him, you want to watch Diego Pavia play.
And I think they're averaging 800,000 viewers this spring or something along the lines of that. You get Diego Pavia in the mix, a polarizing figure, a big name, a guy that was a Heisman Trophy finalist last year. That would get, a little bit of a bump in the ratings. But aside from that, I do not believe Diego Pavia has played his last snap as a quarterback. I don't think Diego Pavia would want to make the transition to anything else. Now, going back to Pat's call, which by the way, thank you for the call. I just don't see him being able to play the slot. He doesn't have the speed.
Yeah.
So and he doesn't have the size either. And slots are not typically, super tall or anything like that, but they're also not super short either. So I don't see that where if you're going to be 5'9", 5'10" playing the slot, you have to have unbelievable athleticism, and I don't think Diego Pavia has that.
Yeah, that was kind of the comparison I was trying to make there, is like Diego Pavia is athletic, like he's escapable, but he doesn't have top end speed. Like I think I saw he ran like a 4.75 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
he had good athleticism to get away from guys in college and make all these plays, but NFL is a completely different beast.
That's why I made the Cam Ward comparison. Again, not comparing them as players, but just like he looks more athletic because of the escapability. But if you just had to look at like straight line speed, and like if you lined Cam Ward up and Diego Pavia up on the outside and said, go beat that cornerback, I don't think it would work out that well, even if they're good at maneuvering the pocket and creating space for themselves. I did want to mention before we wrap up the hour, I saw immediately after the draft ended on Saturday, said, looking ahead to 2027, one thing is clear. QB1, Arch Manning, Texas. And can we please just slow down? Yes, Arch Manning got better throughout last season, and he's going to have every opportunity to go out and prove that he can be quarterback one. They got him what I think is an elite weapon in Cam Coleman, transferring over from Auburn. But the last year's quarterback class, I saw a graphic this weekend, and I'm sure you saw this too, Parker. I think it was No Context College Football put this out there. It was a graphic from week 1 of the college football season, and it said Field Yates 2026 mock draft. And it had Arch Manning going 1. I think it was like Drew Aller going 2, Cade Klubnik going 3, Lenoris Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier. Like it was 6 different quarterbacks going in the first round. Sam Levitt was included in that, and he's not even coming out of college this year. Same with Sellers. Like, let's chill out on the quarterback class from next year. None of these quarterbacks that I look at for next year have proven to me that they are a top 5 NFL draft pick yet. Dante Moore maybe would be the only exception, because I think he would have gone top 5 this year. But you go back, you've got to live up to that hype, right? There's going to be really high expectations for Dante Moore going back to Oregon. The quarterback class looks like it has options, just like last year. Heading into the college football season, it looked like there were options. None of those options worked out last year, and Fernando Mendoza came out of nowhere to be the number 1 pick. This year, I think you have to look at it and say, yeah, Arch Manning looks good. Dante Moore, of course. There's a few others that I'm blanking. Lenoris Sellers, you hope is going to build up to be a top 2-round quarterback again. But there's just, you don't know. So let's not put Arch Manning as QB1 quite yet. I think I heard Joe talking about this last week, and I agreed with most of the sentiment from Mike Herndon in this tweet. He put out a tweet of like, here's all the guys who would be quarterback 1 and tackle 1 and wide receiver 1 in this year's class. And he said, Jeremiah Smith would be wide receiver 1, and Cam Coleman would be wide receiver 1, so on and so forth. And he said Arch Manning would be quarterback 1 in this class. It's just not true. Arch Manning has not proven that he is ready to be an NFL quarterback yet. Let's see what he does this year. And maybe he will be the first quarterback taken. I think he's got the advantage of the Manning last name, but it is way too early to say that Arch Manning is, let alone the number 1 pick, even a first-round pick. I think it's too early to say for Arch Manning. He's got to go prove it this season in his final year at Texas.
I saw a tweet recently from Sam Block, and he said, Nussmeier, projected first, went 249th. Ewers, projected first, went 231st. Jake Fromm, projected first, went 167th. Radler, projected first, went 150th. And Sam Howell, projected first, went 144th. He said college football has a quarterback development problem. And yes, there's some truth to that, as I said earlier in the show. But we also have a way too early mock draft problem, right? Because so much can change throughout the course of a season. So when you're projecting, Cade Klubnik, he's going to be the first overall pick, and things play out how they did last year, you have no idea how things are going to go. Everyone thought Penn State was going to be a national championship contender. Then they go and lose to Oregon. Their season falls off the rails. So You never know how these things are going to work out.
Yeah,
it drives me crazy.
And no, and it's just you're putting expectations on these guys for no reason. Like, let's just see what they do, and the cream will rise to the top. 3 years ago, the draft class where you had 6 quarterbacks in the top 12. Yeah, Caleb Williams was discussed as one of those can't miss guys. And I think Drake May, heading into the season, was talked about as a top 5 level quarterback. But the other 4, like, did anybody think that Jaden Daniels heading to LSU? Like, I think people thought he was a good quarterback, but didn't think he was the number 2 overall pick. Michael Penix for sure wasn't expected to be a top 10 pick. He wasn't even expected to be that pick going into draft night. Same could be said for Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy. This year, you had 6 different guys heading into the season that you felt good about being, oh man, this draft class might be loaded with quarterbacks. And it was a guy that we didn't have anywhere on our radar that went first overall. The college football season is long. We're going to find out who the top quarterbacks are. But let's not say Arch Manning is QB1 yet. He is not Trevor Lawrence. He is not Caleb
People
Williams.
were saying he would be number 1 this year and win the Heisman.
He is not Andrew Luck. Like, Arch Manning is not that type of quarterback that you look at and say, oh, man, we're just waiting one more year for him to come out. He could have come out this year. And if he would have been drafted first overall, he would have come out. He is not that type of prospect. Maybe he develops and ends up being the number 1 overall pick. But saying that he's quarterback 1 right now is crazy. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to chime in, you can text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Back to the Titans after this. The draft is in the past. What does the roster look like right now? Where are some of the key points as we go into training camp? And what are the expectations for this team heading into 2026? We'll talk about all of it in the final hour. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Final hour on this Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. The NFL draft wrapping up over the weekend. Titans made 8 picks, and now that the roster is, I won't say set, because there's always going to be churn, right? Like, they're going to churn the back end of the roster. There's still some free agents out there that the Titans, having the most cap space in the league, could go out and add to this team. But I think you have a pretty good idea of what this team is going to look like in 2026 now. So going through the roster here, I will say the offense is, there's more question marks for me than the defense, for sure. I think they did a nice job of addressing a lot of the big needs on the defensive side of the ball, but the skill positions I feel pretty good about on the offensive side, at least given what you were able to do this offseason. The quarterback and running back rooms are absolutely jam-packed. You've got 4 quarterbacks right now, all who have some sort of pedigree, right? Like Cam Ward, of course, is your starter. Mitch Trubisky has been a backup in the league. And then, Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, 2 of the bigger fan bases in town. That's their most recent good quarterback, their most recent, drafted quarterback that has come out of there. So I think you look at that quarterback room and say they're probably only keeping 2, but how do you get off of Will Levis? And we spent 30 minutes on that. We don't need to do that anymore. The running back room is really interesting, and we touched on this, Parker. Pollard, I think, is going to be on the roster. You need to have the veteran, the new Honda Accord, as TD likes to put it. I think beyond that, there's nobody. Singleton's going to be on the roster, I would say, as the rookie. He's got the more room to grow, and you've got him under contract for longer. But the battle for that running back 3 and maybe 4 spots with Spears, Carter, Chestnut, and Kalel Mullings, like, that's a loaded room right now, and I wonder what the Titans are going to do specifically with Tyjae Spears.
I think I would be in favor of trading Tyjae Spears, because I believe you can have a little bit of value there, and your biggest asset is availability. He's struggled with that. He's struggled with injuries, and when he's on the field, he's produced, but it's just not been to the level that you would hope given his talent. So if there's a way, just because this room is so crowded, if you could trade him and get an asset there, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see a need for him anymore. Singleton is now, and Singleton was a 5th round pick. It's not like they invested a top 100 pick in Singleton. He doesn't have to be part of the future plan for this team, but I just think Spears, again, not connected to this staff in any way. Front office didn't draft him. Saleh didn't pick him. Like, I think they're going to go with the guy they just drafted in Singleton over Tyjae Spears, who has been underwhelming pretty much since the second he got here. He's had his moments, but I think Singleton's going to get the edge over Spears. It might come down to Michael Carter versus Spears versus Kalel Mullings for that 3rd running back
And what
spot.
about Julius Chestnut? He's one of those guys that you try to poach him and you just can't because he keeps making plays.
Somebody's going to end up on the practice squad. Maybe it's Mullings, maybe it's Chestnut. It's going to come down to who's going to help on special teams. And I think Singleton brings that kick return aspect. Like, you can put him back there with Jim DK if you want to have 2 back. And Spears feels expendable to me at this point with that pick of Nicholas Singleton. Wide receiver, I think, and it's so early that it might be there's going to be things that happen here and there. I think your top 6 feels pretty cut and dry. Carnell Tate, of course, you picked him 4th overall. Calvin Ridley, Wan'Dale Robinson, Alec Iamaner, Chim Dike, and Bryce Oliver. Like, Bryce Oliver is a special teams ace when he's been out there. He needs to stay healthy, but those feel like that's your 6. And maybe you see somebody challenge there. I know KJ Osborne is on the team. He's a veteran addition. Didn't play last year, though. He was on a practice squad. Who is is it Tyron Montgomery? They just signed out of John Carroll the D3 guy,
Sounds
undrafted
sounds
free
right.
agent.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's a guy I might keep your eye on, but I don't. I think it's going to be tough. Wide receiver is going to be a tough position to make the team. They're keeping 6, you would guess, and if they're going to keep 7, you'd have to bring a serious addition on special teams. And that's something that will be figured out in training camp. Tight end's a really interesting position for this team, Parker. Gunnar Helm is your clear-cut tight end 1. I think his stock is way up given the decisions the Titans made this offseason to not bring back Chig. You drafted Jaron Kanek in the 7th round, but I think as Keegan said earlier, that is a pure special teams pick. He played linebacker for 3 years at Oklahoma and then moved to tight end. That's a guy who is going to be on your special teams unit. It's another weapon for Bones Fossil. He might make the team, but he's not going to play much of a role on the offensive side of the ball. I think you're looking at a tight end room of Gunnar Helm, Bellinger, DMR, Kanek. I think that's your 4. They signed Granson, Kylan Granson from the Colts. I think he's a camp body. I don't think he makes the team. But tight end with DMR, I think he's going to have to defend that tight end 3 spot because there are some decent challengers to him behind him. And then the O-line, we've talked about that. I think the O-line is strange because you have a lot of interior depth, right? Like, I think you've got guys there. There's 6 guys on the interior offensive line that I think could all make the team. That's, of course, Skoronski. Then you got the 2 at center with Schlotman and Coogan, and then Slater, Volson, and Carmona. Like, I think you've got depth, but do you have the top-end talent on the interior? Whereas on the outside, it's the opposite. You've got your starting tackles with Dan Moore and J.C. Latham, but they did not draft a tackle. And is it just
which terrifies me because right now your swing is Austin
Deculus or Brandon Crenshaw Dixon,
who was a UDFA last year, who
right.
they really like.
They do like him. And they signed a tackle out of Notre Dame as an undrafted free agent, which, like, again, I don't want to act like he's going to Emil Wagner, tackle out of Notre Dame, signed with the Titans as a UDFA. But that's why the offensive line is really interesting to me because on the outside, you have your starters and you feel good about Moore and Latham. On the inside, you got Skoronski, but then it's a bunch of depth pieces and somebody's going to have to emerge to be your starter. So the offensive line, lots of question marks. We can talk about that more coming up next. 615-737-1025. Going through the Titans draft, what it means for the roster, and what are the expectations for this team? Now that you have a better look at what the team is going to look like, how much of a step forward can the Titans take in year 1 under Robert Saleh? 615-737-1025. We want to hear from you. Our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Monday morning. Next Man Up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game, Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly. Wrapping up our conversation around this weekend's draft. It's been a fun show going through the picks the Titans made, what it means for the roster, and we've been looking at the offensive line because I think on this team right now, the position groups, at least at the starting level, seem to be filled, except for along the offensive line. And the interior is going to figure itself out in camp. You've got those 5 guys for 2 spots, Slater, Volson, Sloatman, and then the 2 draft picks this weekend, Carmona and Coogan. Tackle, though, is concerning to me because you've got Dan Moore, who is fine. Dan Moore is going to be your left tackle this year. J.C. Latham at right tackle, you hope is going to take a big step after showing some good flashes down the stretch in year 2. But you got nothing behind that. And an injury could be devastating to this team's season if you have to just go with an Austin Deculus or Brandon Crenshaw Dixon at tackle. I wonder if the Titans go out and sign another tackle to come in and just be in the room. There's some guys out there who I don't think are going to sign without the guarantee that they're going to be a starter. Like Taylor Decker is still out there. He got cut by the Lions. And I would guess that he's holding out at 32 years old. He's holding out for somewhere where he can be a starter. But there are some other guys out there that the Titans could go out, and I would feel better about them being the swing tackle than the options you have there. DJ Humphries, longtime veteran with the Cardinals for a while. He was with the Rams last year. I don't know if I want Cam Robinson, although Cam Robinson as a swing tackle is better than him as a starting tackle, as we've seen. How about this one, though? I don't think he's going to do it. I think he might be holding out for a starting job as well. Jack Conklin's still out on the market. Like, I don't
bring him back.
I don't think Jack Conklin would sign up to be a backup, but the fact that he's still out there right now makes you think that the market for him isn't all that strong. Maybe he's waiting for this week. If somebody didn't address tackle and they don't have a locked-in starter there, he can sign and compete. Because whoever the Titans bring in, there's not going to be competition for one of the tackle spots, right? Like, you're paying Dan Moore $20 million a year. He was fine, and he's better than the options that are out there right now. And with J.C. Latham, of course, there's no competition there. He's your right tackle. I do wonder if maybe they could get somebody to come in and be the swing tackle who's one of those established veterans, because it's really, really thin at tackle right now for the Titans. If one of those guys goes down, you're going to be in big trouble really fast.
Yeah, because I don't know a lot about this Austin Deculus guy, to be honest, and maybe there's a reason for that. But yeah, you're right. If one of these tackles goes down, or J.C. Latham doesn't make that jump, which we're all hoping he makes, being in year 3, I'm running out of excuses for him now at right tackle. If he doesn't make that jump, the Titans offensive line is going to be in a lot of trouble.
I think J.C. Latham, funny enough, once the Callahans were gone, I thought he looked a lot better. Like, I thought J.C. Latham had a pretty good final month and a half of the season, but you don't draft a guy to be pretty good at 7th overall. You want him to be your franchise tackle, and he's got to prove that he is that this year. We saw Peter Skoronski prove it this year. He's going to sign a pretty lucrative extension this offseason, most likely. J.C. Latham has to take that same step this season, but I'm just imagining the world where J.C. Latham goes down in training camp, and you knock on wood, hoping that that doesn't happen and everybody stays healthy. And the right side of your line from center to right tackle goes Austin Schlottman, Cordell Volson, and Austin Deculus in week 1. It's like, you cannot have that situation in front of your second-year quarterback. Cam Ward needs to be protected. I think you've put decent competition in the spots at center and right guard, but no matter who wins those spots, there's going to be big question marks heading into week 1 of whether they can actually perform at the highest level. At right tackle or left tackle, if one of those guys goes down, you have nothing behind them. And so I would, we talk about the Titans still having money to spend in free agency. If there's one spot I think they need to add somebody, it's tackle. I wouldn't hate calling Kevin Zeitler and seeing if he wants to come back and play right guard, but you're pretty loaded in that room right now. I think you have to go sign a veteran swing tackle. You didn't address it in the draft this weekend. You have to get somebody to be a safety net in case there's an injury to Moore or Latham coming up in training camp.
There are some guys available, right? You mentioned Taylor Decker, who that would be a good option.
I think he wants to be a starter, right? Like, I think there are a couple of, and they may have to settle, right? Like if they want to keep playing, they may have to settle.
You mentioned Jack Conklin, who's also probably going to want to be a starter at right tackle.
Yeah.
What about Jonah Williams?
Jonah Williams could be a good option. I don't have him on this list. Spot Track has been weird, where Spot Track is showing players who are not available as available.
You have to.
Let's see.
I had to click the available tab. I'm also
Jonah Williams is still a free agent, so yeah, maybe
with the estimated value of $10 million.
I don't think he gets that much. I think
I don't think so either.
If you're going to get one of these guys, it's going to be one. What did Kevin Zeitler get last year? Like 1 year, $8 million. Like I would guess it's somewhere in that range.
Cam Robinson is also available.
I don't like Cam Robinson as a starter, but again, I think as a swing tackle, I think maybe he could work out as at least a guy who's done it. But
if these guys are wanting to be starters, Taylor Decker and Jack Conklin, then
it's just how many starting jobs
beggars
are there?
Can't be choosers,
right?
You know?
Like they've got to if they want to play, they may have to settle for a swing tackle or competition somewhere. I just think injury to one of those tackles could devastate this season, right? Like I have elevated expectations for this team this year. You've got a coaching staff that is full of experience and seems to know what it's doing. I mean, Robert Saleh, Brian Daboll, Gus Bradley, Bones Fossil, like you have raised the floor with that coaching hire because those guys seem to know what they're doing in terms of developing talent and putting them in good positions on the field. You have added in free agency by spending a ton at positions that you needed starting level players. Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott in the cornerback room. You got John Franklin Myers up front and have loaded up that defensive line. You bring in Wan'Dale Robinson, and then you add possible top-end players in the first round like Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk. This team looks like it's going to be more competitive. There are two injuries that I think could just devastate your chances of taking a step forward. Of course, Cam Ward is one of them. You lose the quarterback, everything else goes down the drain. I don't see Mitch Trubisky keeping this team competitive. The other one is one of the tackles. If you can't give Cam Ward time to throw on a consistent basis, that offense is just not going to be successful. So I would really like to see a much better safety net for tackle than what they have right now, with Brandon Crenshaw Dixon and Austin Deculus being your next best options if you get injuries to Dan Moore or J.C. Latham. There's options out there. I think this next wave of free agency, the post-draft wave, could see the Titans add a couple of more veteran pieces to try and at least give you, just make you feel a little bit better about what's going on up front, where offensive line is your biggest question mark right now. But overall,
Borgonzi and Saul are smart people. I mean, they see this just like we see this. They have to.
And maybe they've made calls to some of these tackles, and the tackles want to wait it out and see what happens in the draft and see if there are any openings where they can step right into a starting role. And we'll see. I would, if you could get Jack Conklin back here as your swing tackle, I'd feel pretty good about that. I know he's been injured and he hasn't exactly been the same guy when he was here in his first couple of years in Cleveland, but that's at least a guy that I would feel better about stepping in if you had an injury up front to Dan Moore or J.C. Latham. But overall, the offense looks to be in a better place. You have, with the addition of Wan'Dale Robinson and drafting Carnell Tate, I think your wide receiver room is slotted in a better way where you're not counting on Chim Dike and Alec Iamaner to be wide receivers 2 and 3. They're wide receivers 4 and 5. And I think that's a better spot for guys with those talents. And they'll have the opportunity to try and pass some of the veteran players there. I think your quarterback taking another step under a better quarterback developer in Brian Daboll. That's something I like. I'm excited to see what Gunnar Helm does. The offensive line is the biggest question mark, and we've been saying that for years. Can they get the offensive line right? That could make this offense take a much larger step than we're expecting in 2026. 615-737-1025. We'll flip over to the defensive side. I really like what the defense looks like, at least at the top, right? Like the starting defense, I think, has the potential to be really good this year. There are some depth issues, and we'll dive into that coming up next. 615 737 1025 is the phone number. We'd love to hear from you. We got a couple more segments on this Monday morning. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game.
on the line, but still at wide 9, maybe not so much. Do you feel a little unbalanced there?
No, not necessarily. I mean, these guys come in waves, and I feel good about some of the outside rush ends and that we do have right now. And Keldrick, we can move all up and down the line of scrimmage, really. You know, with
Maybe
this line.
have a lot of personnel out there where you're not playing with the guy that plays that wide?
No, some of these guys will line up wide. I mean, you've seen it in the defenses. You know, you're always looking for sometimes for some of those, like, you know, speed guys in there, but you know, it's just the way that, you know, these guys come in waves in Salah's defense.
That was Mike Borgonzi talking about the lack of a true wide 9 speed rusher in this defense after the addition of Keldrick Falk, who is fits more of the mold of the inside-outside guy that Robert Saleh seems to like. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. We just looked at the offense. What stands out after the draft? On the defense, I would say the defensive line is the strongest area of this Titans team, and I think that's pretty obvious looking at the pieces that they have. It's not just the top line of Johnson and Simmons and Franklin Myers and now Keldrick Falk, but you've got multiple waves of players that you feel like can make an impact. And Mike Borgonzi answered that question. Paul then asked Robert Saleh about it on Friday during the introductory press conference as well. And Saleh specifically mentioned that he thinks that Jermaine Johnson, Jacob Martin, and Femi Oladejo can all play in that wide 9 role for this team. So I do like the mention of Femi Oladejo. I think from the Saleh hire and since they've taken over, it does seem like the stock is ticking up for Femi Oladejo, despite maybe an underwhelming shortened first season for the second-round pick from last year.
Well, don't you feel comfortable with, you know, you have a ball of clay on the defensive side of the ball, specifically the defensive line. Don't you feel good about Saleh being able to at least get the most out of that? Because he's been able to work with, you know, not having a lot, but be able to turn it into something. So doing more with less is how I like to refer to it as. I feel comfortable Saleh getting his hands on him and seeing what he could do. Now, I don't know if he's going to live up to the expectations of being a second-round draft pick, but you certainly, there's a little bit of confidence that Saleh is going to be able to work with him versus somebody else.
Yeah, and I think with Femi, he doesn't feel like he has the weight of the weight of the world on his shoulders anymore, right? Like last year, he was brought into a team that was thin.
And that can do wonders for a player.
Yeah, like last year, I think there was expectations on Femi. You're a second-round pick. There's not a whole lot of talent on the outside for that team after Harold Landry left, and he was expected to step in and make an impact right away. And it didn't happen. But this year, you've got 9, 10 guys who I think we all look at and say, yeah, they could help on the defensive front. So Femi becomes a guy who you can put in positions to succeed and pick and choose your spots for him rather than somebody who has to come in and be that dominant force that you may have hoped for coming out of last year's draft. I do think the linebacker core looks a lot better with the addition of Anthony Hill. Hill is the Mike linebacker. He's going to be the green dot guy. I really love the fit in Robert Saleh's defense. I think that was my favorite pick of the draft. And I like that it puts Cedric Gray and Cody Barton in roles that may be more fit to them, right? Like if you went into the season saying, all right, it's Cedric Gray and it's Cody Barton, and then I guess James Williams or is it Dorian Mausey, the linebacker they picked up on waivers last year, who's a good special teamer, but like you're thin there and also don't have a ton of top end talent. Adding Hill, I think, slots everybody into a much better role for this year. The front seven could be one of the top units in the league, right? Like with Robert Saleh and the way he uses those guys, I do think the front seven could end up being a top 10 unit for the Titans. The secondary is going to be a question mark. I don't think the top end talent is a question. You got Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott and Amani Hooker and Kevin Winston. Like I like the starters you have out there, but what about nickel? That was a position, Parker, that we talked about heading into the draft of you probably want to add a guy who can play that big nickel role for Robert Saleh. And is Marcus Harris somebody that they believed in? I think this weekend maybe gives you the answer that, yeah, Marcus Harris is going to be expected to start in the slot, in the nickel right off the bat. And Mike Borgonzi even mentioned him after the draft when he was asked about not adding somebody in the secondary. So you're going to rely on Marcus Harris. After that, there's a lot of question marks in the secondary. Is Tony Adams going to play a decent amount as your third safety? Joshua Williams, the guy they signed from the Chiefs, is he going to be somebody who can play consistently at cornerback, or is he more of a depth piece like a Darrell Baker? So I think there are question marks about the depth in the secondary, but I do like the top-end talent that they've been able to add this offseason in free agency with Taylor and Flott. And hope you're able to get more out of Kevin Winston, a healthy Kevin Winston in year 2. But overall, the defense, they've made a lot of progress in 1 year with that defense. And you hope that Robert Saleh, just as he's done wherever he's gone, is going to be able to get the most out of that defense, the defensive front, and what he's got in the back end.
Well, I look at how they drafted when he was in New York and what he was able to do on the defensive side of the ball there. And even before his New York tenure, his first stint with the San Francisco 49ers, you never had to worry about defense. And then last year, and when he made his return to San Francisco, and the 49ers had all those injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and yet he had them, one game away from getting the 1 seed in the NFC, despite all the injuries, and they made it to the second round of the playoffs and lost to the Seahawks. He got that unit way further than they should have been, given all the injuries. So you never have to worry about defense with Robert Saleh. And getting Brian Daboll at least to coach the offense for this season, it certainly gives you a lot more confidence that they're going to be able to perform. But it's just hard to dismiss the concern regarding the interior of the offensive line and even the depth with offensive tackle.
Yep. And I think that the offensive line is the one spot I look at and say that could really ruin the season. Like, if the offensive line is one of the worst in the league, as it's been a couple of the last 5 years, if it is that bad, you're going to struggle. The biggest hope that you have is that Carmen Bracillo is going to get the most out of Dan Moore and J.C. Latham, and the tackle positions will be solidified. But you're right, as we talked about, not a lot of depth there. 615-737-1025. Let's go back to the phone lines. Keegan is called back in. Keegan, good morning. Thanks for calling.
Hey, thank you, fellas. So I've been listening in the last segment. Y'all talked a lot about the offensive line. Now y'all talking about the defense, and a lot about Saleh and what he can do with the defense. And one thing I want to say about it is, I think with Robert Saleh, the first thing anyone expects is a good, strong defense, especially the front seven. Well, we've given that to Saleh. So we give him what he's great at. I think really with this draft being over, seeing some of the holes we still have and contracts for next year, I think the best way to determine is Saleh becoming a better coach? Is he progressing? What kind of GM will Mike Borgonzi be long time? I think a lot of that will come down to what we do. I know it's so early to look ahead, but next offseason, because if you look at the contract, Dan Moore has gotten out after next year. I think Schlottman's on a 1-year deal. We got a few guys in the draft, Coogan, Carmona. We bring them in. Hopefully they progress, but you got offensive linemen moving out next year, and best case scenario, J.C. Latham doesn't regress. I don't expect him to be top 5, but hopefully he just doesn't regress. So next year, offensive line will have to be addressed yet again. And I believe when I called in earlier, I brought it up about the defensive backs and the guys like Alontae Taylor, Cordell Flott, even Amani Hooker. We're going to start looking them in a year or two when their contracts are running out, saying, do we still need these guys, or are we going to keep them? Do we let them go? And then we're going to have to deal with Borgonzi and Saleh working together, drafting offensive linemen, drafting defensive backs. And I think whenever that happens, that will kind of show what the true ceiling of this franchise can be with them too. We've given Saleh what he wants already, that strong defensive front. Brian Daboll has his quarterback. I think where you really will be able to tell what's happening in the future and kind of what ceiling we can have moving forward is how we address the offensive line and defensive back positions moving forward. Because I like Taylor, I like Flott, but they're not going to be here forever. Sooner or later, we're going to have just those positions. So, yeah, I don't know. That's what I got. I just kind of want to talk about,
thanks for the call, Keegan. And I think you're right that the Dan Moore contract, the cornerback deals, those are more Band-Aids. They want to be a draft, develop, retain team, and that's what they've said. But you can't just say that. You got to go do it. And these last two draft classes, I think there's a lot of pieces that you're optimistic about. Can they develop them, right? Like, what's Cam Ward going to do this year? What is Femi Oladejo going to do this year? Can Kevin Winston stay healthy and prove he's a long-term solution in the secondary? Marcus Harris, Alec Iman, or Chimdike, that whole class, this class as well. And I think next year's class is going to be kind of the finishing touches on what they hope can be a playoff roster. I think left tackle is going to be a huge target for the Titans next year in the draft. If I had to guess right now what position the Titans take in the first round of the draft, I would say offensive tackle. But you do need long-term solutions at cornerbacks. You don't have young, controllable cornerbacks in that room right now. So I do think that's a good point by Keegan, that you've got a lot of Band-Aids at some spots that are trying to get you back to being a decent team this year. But if this team is going to actually become a contender again, you're going to have to address those needs in the draft.
Yeah, and you also have the aspect of the contracts too, where you can get out of them with Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott after 2 years, right? Same thing with Wan'Dale Robinson. So, the Band-Aid options, you like bringing in Alontae Taylor. I have a really good feeling that Cordell Flott is going to be really good this year as well, but they're Band-Aid options, exactly what you said.
Yeah.
So you definitely need to address those positions in future drafts.
And 3337 says, am I the only one who thinks we should have gotten a left tackle at number 4 instead of maybe a number 1 wide receiver? I was okay with an Edger Love, but now Tate has got to be great or he is a bust. I wouldn't say Tate has to be great or he is a bust. I think he's got to be great to make it worth the pick, but bust would mean that he's like Justin Blackmon. Like that's a wide receiver bust. But if he's Sammy Watkins, like, yeah, he's not worth that pick, but he's still a good player. I think if there was a left tackle to be had at number 4, I think the Titans would have done it, right? Like if there was a franchise left tackle sitting on the board at number 4, I think they would have taken him. But in this draft, your best offensive linemen were more right tackles than they were left tackles.
Which was a problem.
And it's like, are you going to take Caden Proctor 4th overall? No. He went 12th, but he's not a 4th overall pick. They're going to address left tackle long-term shortly. I would guess
you couldn't take Maui Goa either because
they're playing him at guard.
Yeah, take a guard with the 4th
overall
overall pick, and you let me know how that works out.
No, and like I agree with the sentiment. Like if there was a franchise left tackle there, take him. You need one. Dan Moore is not a franchise left tackle. There just wasn't one available in this year's draft at number 4. 615-737-1025. We got one more segment on this Monday. We'll wrap things up after this. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Final segment on this Reaction Monday. The NFL draft wrapped up over the weekend. Titans brought in 8 new players. Of course, Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk in the first round on Thursday. Anthony Hill, the 60th pick on Friday. And then Fernando Carmona, Nicholas Singleton, Jackie Marshall, Pat Coogan, and Jaron Kennick on Saturday. We're going to wrap up on Titans here, but I did want to mention some Preds news. The Predators signed Vitaly Pinchuk to a 1-year entry-level contract. He ranked 3rd in the KHL in goals with 31 last year and 6th in points during the last season. So I think he was a pretty sought-after free agent coming over from Russia. Went undrafted a few years ago, but maybe could be another piece, another young piece for this Predators team. So did want to mention that news coming out this morning. But wrapping up on the Titans, after the draft, I do feel better about where this team stands. Much better than where they did the last 2 years. 5633 saying we went from feeling bad about every position going into the offseason to feeling somewhat optimistic about every position besides the offensive line. It wasn't all going to be fixed in 1 year, not going to complain. And I agree with that. Something that we have said since last year's draft, about a year ago right now, I said I think the Titans are planning for 2027 to be where their window starts again, when they're getting back into the playoff hunt and hopefully back into the playoffs. This year is about getting your head back above water. You have been horrible for 2 years. You've had 4 years of wasted draft picks. This year is about adding more talent and developing the talent around you and hopefully getting more wins and getting back to being a competitive football team, which you have not been for the past 2 years. That's what this season is all about. Would you love them to make the playoffs if they go ahead of schedule? Yes. If Cam Ward takes a massive step and he is Drake May, putting up Drake May numbers in the MVP conversation, and Carnell Tate is rookie of the year, and the defense is top 10 in the NFL, then yeah, sure. But that's a lot of things that would have to go right for this Titans team. I think this year is just about getting your head back above water, getting back to 6, 7, 8 wins, feeling like you took a step forward. And then next year, you're hopefully filling out those other big needs that you have to get this team back to contending for the AFC South. But I do think they've done a good job this offseason. They filled needs short-term. They filled needs long-term. Now you've got to develop those players and see Cam Ward turn into a franchise quarterback, Carnell Tate turn into a wide receiver 1, J.C. Latham develop into your franchise right tackle. That's what you need to see this year. You need to see the development happening of your young players, because the one thing that could slow down this rebuild from finally ending is the guys you pick just not being all that good. And you've brought in an experienced coaching staff that has proven that they can get the most out of players on their phase of the ball, whether that's Saleh as a defensive coordinator, Dable as an offensive coordinator, or Bones Fossil as a special teams coordinator. Those guys have proven they get a lot out of their players. Can they do it here? And does that lead to this team starting to trend back upwards towards being a playoff team? That's what this year's all about. It's not about having every box checked. It's about starting to show progress as a football team.
Yeah, it's not about, going from 3-14 to 14-3 and going to the Super Bowl like the Patriots did, right? I think if I had to set the bar for this season, I think you would be really happy with 7 wins, going from 3-14 in 24, 3-14 last year, to improving your win total by 4 wins with the first year under Saleh. Look, the Titans have too many roster needs to completely flip the team and be in Super Bowl contention or even playoff contention next year. They may sneak in. I don't know. I doubt it. But if you're able to get to 7 wins this year, it's a pretty solid season.
Yeah, I think you need 6. I think you've got 6-11 is kind of the bar for me. If you're less than that, and wins don't always mean you dominate somebody. Sometimes it's just, the Cardinals game last year. The Titans did not play better than the Cardinals in that game, but a couple things went their way and they won. But I think 6 wins is kind of my floor for them. I'd like to see 7, and then anything beyond that would be overachieving. But their schedule's not all that tough this year. And it wasn't supposed to be all that tough last year and ended up being the hardest schedule in the entire league. But you play Cleveland, you play Pittsburgh, who, what's their quarterback situation going to look like? You play the Jets. All those games are at home. Those are 3 games I think you can win right off the bat. And then, of course, you play your home games against the AFC South as well. I don't think any of those are not winnable. Like the Texans and Jags are better than you. Colts are probably right around the same. But none of those are games you can't win. The Eagles and Commanders both are probably above you, but winnable. On the road, there are some tough games in here, like Detroit would be tough. Baltimore's tough. I think Cincy's going to be better this year. But you play the Giants, you play the Raiders. Like, I can see 7 wins on this schedule. Obviously not knowing how it's going to be laid out, but I think 6 or 7 wins would be great. Anything beyond that would be icing on top.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I would just be happy, and I think any Titans fan would be happy, just given the way the last 2 years have gone, if you're able to get to that 6 or 7 win mark and look competitive while doing so. Because there were so many points early on in the season where you're just watching the team, and if our goal was not to cover the Titans on a regular basis, we wouldn't be watching because it was just hard to watch.
No, and it's I think maybe a better way to put it than setting a win total is be playing meaningful football games beyond October, right? Like last year, none of your November games mattered.
We knew after 3 games how this season was going to go.
Right. November and maybe December, at least November, play meaningful football games. I think that should be the goal for this team. That'll wrap things up for us. Fun show. The Titans draft in the books. 8 new players added to the roster. We'll continue to react throughout the week. We'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow, but more reaction coming up next. Chase and Big Joe, keep it right here on 102.5 The Game.